So, in a couple of my videos, I've kind of talked about some more like serious stuff or whatever, but I've never really had a place where I've put everything in its own like dedicated area. Um, Not a lot of people really watch my videos. I mean, you can see like the view counts on them or whatever. Um, but I thought on the off chance someone did, um, they would find these and maybe they would understand me a bit more as a person. Um, so I wrote a list of things that are important for me to talk about, and I just am gonna make a video for each of them. Um, I might be rambling or whatever. I don't have like a script of what I want to say or whatnot, but the first one I wanted to talk about was my childhood. Um, I thought I'd start with that because maybe it would help explain some of the other things I'm going to talk about. Um, so, yeah, um, my name is Adam. I was born um, 2007. I'm 18 years old right now. Um, and shit's been pretty hard. Um, I am the second oldest of all my siblings. I have five siblings. I have a brother and four sisters. Um, Growing up, though, I only had a brother and two sisters. Um, I don't remember a whole lot of when I was very young. I have some very small memories of when it was just me and my brother before my sisters had been born. Back when we lived in a place I called the Blue House, and things were all right. My family has never really been rich or anything. Um, it was a small house, and the walls were yellow, and I mean, I had a race car bed, and that was pretty dope. Um, and then we moved into a new house. Um, we were actually renting it from my dad's brother. Um, this was back when my parents were still married. Um, and around that time was when my sister Evelyn was born. Um, and then not long after, my other sister Will was born as well. Um, Things were really hard. My parents, we couldn't afford a whole lot. Um, my mom didn't have a job, so she was like a stay-at-home mom because there was no one else to watch us kids. So my dad worked a lot. I remember not really seeing him a whole lot. Um, and the times we would see him, it would be really early in the morning. My mom would wake us all up, and we would all get in the car and drive my dad to work and then drive home. Um, I remember my dad used to be tired all the time because he worked constantly. Um, Eventually, he started going to school at the same time, and so we saw him even less. Um, Things just kind of, they kind of fell apart. We were really struggling financially. Um, my cousins were living with us for a while as well. I mean, kind of the whole time we lived in that house, people would come and go. You know, someone would move in for a little bit and then they would move out. And we lived with my grandparents. They lived in the basement. Um, my mom slept a lot. Me and my siblings weren't supervised a whole lot from what I remember. Um, our whole house was fenced off, so we were okay, but still were pretty wild. Especially with the influence of our cousins, since our cousins were older than us at the time. Um, Eventually, my parents got divorced. I don't remember how old I was. I think I was 7 or 8 at the time. I could be wrong though. I remember me and my brother were playing with army men, and they called us out to the living room and they told us, and I didn't really know what to say or how to feel about it, I guess. Um, I didn't know if there was anything I could do about it, so um, a lot changed after that. We all still lived in the same house, but my parents started arguing a lot about all sorts of things. Um, I remember one really big fight in particular. Well, I don't know. I'll talk about that a little later, but at that time, my mom started making new friends, and my dad started dating again. Um, my mom was friends with this guy, Chase, who got her into smoking marijuana, um, which I think is the reason that to this day I really hate weed. Um, yeah. Then with my dad, he started dating a lot of people, and a lot of them weren't good people. I remember this girl named Bree. She was horrible. She would yell a lot, and she had a son named Kanan, and he was horrible. He would hit a lot. He would throw away our stuff, and he would break things. And one time, my dad tried to leave, and he put nails under his tires. Um, that relationship lasted for a little, but they ended up breaking up. A lot of the other people my dad was with, I don't really remember though. And then he started dating my now stepmom, Summer. Um, and she was a lot different. When she came over for the first time, she got us kids gifts. She gave me this like fart piano toy, um, which at the time was like the number one thing I would have loved. Um, the argument that I really remember happened when my mom's whole family was over. She was yelling at my dad a lot. All of us kids were in my parents' room with my Aunt Kim, eating Little Caesars pizza and crying, and my mom was just yelling and yelling and yelling, and then eventually my aunts joined her yelling at my dad, and then my grandparents joined in yelling at my dad, and my dad was just standing there, and Summer was in the kitchen making food and crying. Um, I remember sometimes they'd argue so bad that the other people in the house would have to take us kids out and drive us around. Um, used to sleep without a blanket because the only blanket I had stickers all over them, like the stuff from the bushes that hurt. And I was too scared to tell my parents about it because I thought that they would get mad at me. Um, Played a lot of video games when I was a kid, and I still do to this day. Um, Me and my brother used to play Terraria together a lot. We haven't played a game together in I don't even know how long though. Um, my mom started doing more drugs. Um, she was on oxys for a while, and she moved to worse drugs, and then we moved away with my dad. He got full custody of us with Summer. We moved to this place called Willowbrook. And the kids we hung out with were wild, and we would see my mom maybe once every other weekend for a couple hours. She would drive over an hour down to come get us, and she'd drive an hour home. Um, while my dad was moving us into Willowbrook, we lived with my grandparents for a while since they had moved away. And I remember them being angry at us a lot. They would get angry when we ate food and when we made noise and stuff like that. And then we didn't see my mom for a long time. We started going to school. I got put straight into second grade, and I remember it being the first time I ever remembered school. Um, I went in and then I was with a teacher for about an hour, and then we would switch classes or go to recess or whatever. But my parents told me that after school I had to go to um, a room to use the computers until they picked me up. So I didn't know we were switching classes, so I went right to that room, and a fifth grade teacher came up to me crying, and I got taken to the class I was supposed to be in. I didn't really ever like school. I had a lot of trouble making friends since I didn't really have any experience talking to other kids my age. Um, I knew people, but I was never really close with anyone. I never really had a best friend or whatever for a long time. Um, and then I went to third grade. I was in this guy's class. His name was Mr. Tor, and I was really good at math, and he knew that. Um, he used to get really mad at me for helping the boy next to me do math. His name was Nathan. He was special needs, and he would always ask me for help, and I didn't know how to say no. Mr. Tor would take me out into the hallway and yell at me, tell me that I shouldn't be helping him and that I need to focus on my own work. Um, I joined the debate team in third grade. Um, which is kind of weird to think about because, what third grader is debating, but we had an argument on whether cigarettes were good or bad, and I got assigned to defend that cigarettes were good, and I quit the debate team because I couldn't do it. My mom, she smoked cigarettes all the time, and the idea of defending something like that was something that was, I guess, just too much. Um, and then we um, moved to a new place called Royal Ridge. Um, I don't remember a lot about fourth grade. I just remember that my teacher didn't really like me, and that I didn't really have a lot of friends that year either. Every time it was recess, I would go and I would sit against the brick wall with my head in my sweater. I'd think about whatever game I was going to play later that day. Um, it was around that time that my parents couldn't watch us after school, so we started going to a place called Boys and Girls Club. Um, I never liked Boys and Girls Club though. It was the same thing as school where I didn't really have any friends, so I just dreaded being there. Every hour or two they'd assign people to different activities, and none of them sounded interesting to me. But I'd have to do something, so I'd pick whatever one sounded the least miserable, and I always hated it though. Never had any fun doing any of those things. Um, my parents never really understood why I hated it so much. Then I started going to fifth grade. It was probably the first time in a long time I had made a new friend. I had a friend in third grade named Marcus. He wasn't in my school, he was in my apartment complex, and him and me hung out a bit, but I could always tell that he liked my brother more than me, so. Um, People in fifth grade were a bit nicer. Um, this guy, Boston, showed me around the school. He was really nice. He listened to he listened to the Notorious B.I.G. a lot, and so I know every word of Big Papa because him and me would listen to it a lot. Um, I played Foursquare with them a lot, Boston and his other friends. Um, Me and Boston got into a fight one time. I don't remember how, but he pushed me, and so I pushed him back. We hit each other a couple times and then got up and just continued on with our day. No teachers ever saw or anything. Um, then I met my friend Michael. I was at the bus stop and there was a new kid there, and I was like, oh, like, who is this? Because, I knew everybody. I wasn't friends with them, but I knew them because the only kids at our bus stop were people that lived in our apartment complex. But I walked up to Michael and I was like, hey, like, who are you? And we were in the same class, so we got to talk a lot. Um, we had sleepovers pretty often. Michael's family was pretty bad. He lived with his sister, and um, we would play we would play Fortnite a lot, actually, back when Fortnite was still really new. I remember playing in season one. I wasn't in fifth grade when it was season one, but I remember playing season one. Um, Me and Michael haven't talked in a long time. After we went to middle school, he stopped talking to me. I lived in the same apartment complex for sixth grade. I It was called Union. I had to take my scooter to school every day, and it was quite the walk. Um, Probably a little over a mile. But it was the only way I could get to school since there was no bus for us. Me and my brother would go together. One time I was on my way to school and I stopped at a crosswalk and this lady nudged for me to go, and when I went forward she drove and hit me. I fell off my scooter um, onto my violin, and she got out and she apologized, and then she drove away and continued on with my day. And when I got to my orchestra class, my teacher yelled at me because all my strings were broken. And I told her that I got hit by a car, and she went stone faced, and she kind of freaked out and was like asking if I told my parents or whatever. And you know, I remember that I didn't see my mom a lot. Um, and when I did, it wasn't for very long. She'd come over sometimes, and she was never allowed in our house. But she would pick us up, and we'd go to a grocery store, and we'd buy cold fried chicken, and we'd buy donuts and Kool-Aid, and then we'd go to a park and we'd eat and we'd play, and then she would leave. She was dating a pretty awful guy at that time, so she didn't come around a lot, and that was when she was really getting into her drug addiction, so that kind of made it worse. I met Sasha, to this day one of my bestest friends, in sixth grade. Um, he was playing Geometry Dash on the bleachers in our gym class. It was a game that I played with Michael a lot back when him and me used to talk, and Michael used to get upset at me for beating levels that he hadn't beaten yet. I introduced myself to Sasha, and he didn't speak a whole lot of English at that time, but I still really wanted to be his friend. We started sitting at lunch together, and he would buy like 10 sugar cookies every single day. He would sometimes give me one, and then eventually he told me that he was scared that if he stopped giving me cookies, I would stop being his friend. And I got really sad because I didn't care about the cookies. You know, I have a text that he sent me on Snapchat all that time ago where he said he's worried about sharing with people because if someone gave them more cookies than he gave them, that they wouldn't sit with him anymore. But I sat with him the rest of that year. I met my best friend ever, named Delaney, in sixth grade. That wasn't her real name, but that was what she went by, and none of the teachers respected it. We would hang out a lot after school, just at a park nearby. Um, Her parents were really abusive. They would hit her and they would burn her a lot, and she didn't want to go home, so I stayed with her until she had to go home. I remember one time in class, um, she was using an eraser on her skin until her skin was gone. I remember telling her not to do that because that would hurt herself. That was the first time I had been exposed to self-harm, at least that directly. Um, Delaney would smoke cigarettes when we hung out every day, ones that she would take from her parents, and I remember trying them and smoking them with her, but I never told my parents because I know they'd get mad. And I hated them, and they were disgusting, and I hated them even more because my mom used them, but I think back then I just wanted to understand why my mom used them. Um, Delaney would burn herself on her thighs a lot with a lighter. She never showed me or anything, but she would tell me about it a lot. Um, I don't remember why she did it. I'm assuming it was just because everything was so hard and her parents were so horrible. And then I moved away. Um, I moved to Las Vegas. That was around the time that COVID-19 hit, and everyone was panicking, and my school burned halfway down, and you know. When I moved to Vegas, it was all online school, and I remember hating it because I hated just listening to someone talk through headphones, and I hated having to be next to all my siblings when I did my work because I couldn't focus, and I didn't like being around people that long. Um, um, I never really did my work. I failed all my classes back then. But to the school system, it didn't really matter since everyone was trying to figure out what we were going to do. I had to walk to school to get food every day because we couldn't afford to feed us kids every day. Um, I had a good friend named Finn back then. We chatted a lot, and I never knew him in person. But when 8th grade hit and we were going back to normal school, I remember him telling me that he didn't want to meet me. Um, 6 months into my 7th grade year, I learned that Delaney shot herself. Um, she used her dad's gun that he didn't keep locked up. He kept it in his nightstand and it was loaded. And we were so far away that there was nothing I could do. And I remember blaming myself a lot for that because, she didn't tell me anything, and there was no goodbye, and I talked to her the day before like normal, and I never told my parents about it because I never really told my parents anything. Um, when I started going to real school again, the pandemic had kind of killed all my social skills, so I didn't really have any friends in 8th grade. Um, I remember this guy I thought was my friend. I'd see him every day, and um, years later, I remember that he was using me for um, like homework answers. He never really talked to me, and every time I tried to, he would just ask me to send him a picture of the homework, and I guess that um, I didn't mind because that was the best I'd get. Um, I won Student of the Month in 8th grade from my English teacher, but I didn't have anyone to share that with, you know. When I told my parents, they didn't really care. Um, I got invited to join the National Junior Honor Society because I had good grades. I joined and I volunteered a lot. Um, we'd do clothing drives and food drives and make posters to spread awareness and whatever, but I never really talked to anyone. I was too nervous and I wasn't really good with people, um, even though I really wanted to be. Um, then I went on to high school. I was terrified. My brother went to the same school. Um, that's where I met some really good friends, actually. At the beginning of the year, I didn't really talk to anyone, but after some time, I met this guy named Alex. He was a really good friend of mine for a long time. I met this girl named Sabrina. Um, if I'm being honest, I had a really big crush on her. Um, I still talk to her to this day. Um, in 10th grade, um, I was in a ceramics class, and I had a friend named Brian. I never really knew his true grade. Pretty sure he was a junior or senior or whatever. But he was really nice to me. Um, he never felt like fake, or he never made me feel bad for being awkward. Sabrina had invited me to join her Discord server. Um, but we still didn't talk the most. back then, me and Alex would talk a lot and we'd play a lot of games together, but we would argue a lot too, and I guess eventually it was too much and we stopped being friends. He had blocked me on everything. Um, and then that December was really hard. I was really depressed, and I'll talk about it more in another one, but it was really hard. Um, a new girl transferred into our school named Lily. I remember also having a really big crush on her as well. Um, she seemed so close, but so out of reach, you know? She was in my ceramics class, but she was also in my English class. Um, I remember moving to talk to her in English one time in hopes that we'd become friends, and it kind of worked. And over time we got closer, and we talk every day, and I remember getting so sad every time she wasn't at school, 'cause then ceramics wasn't fun. Um, I was having a really hard time, and I really started struggling to do any schoolwork. Um, my ceramics teacher noticed though, and even though I didn't do good work or I put my head down a lot, she still gave me passing grades. She'd tell me that it'd be okay and that she understood. Me and Sabrina started getting closer after me and Alex stopped being friends. I remember sitting alone at lunch every day for months. I'd pretend like I was playing on my phone, but I was just sitting there, and one day she invited me to sit at lunch with her friends, and I was really happy. I said yes, and it was nice. I didn't really know any of our other friends. I mean, to this day, I only really know one other person that she talked to back then, but I guess I was just happy to be around her. Um, I still had a crush on her, but I had accepted that nothing would come of that, um, and that I just wanted to be there for her and be her friend. Um, we hung out quite a few times. I remember that her house was really far, but I still wanted to hang out with her, so I would walk 4 miles to her house, and then we would hang out for a while, and then I would walk 4 miles back. Um, we got pretty close physically. We hugged a lot. That always made me feel really happy. Um, around the time that I moved, we would hold hands sometimes, and um, yeah. I remember really liking Lily, and for a while I thought that she liked me too, but I knew that I was moving after my 10th grade year, and at the end of the summer I asked her to hang out quite a few times, but it never really seemed like she could or that she wanted to. I remember one time she came over and we played this game called Overcooked, and we would yell at each other, and it's to this day one of the fondest memories I have. And she would play Five Nights at Freddy's 4, but she'd get too scared and make me play, and then get scared at me playing. Um, and I remember being so scared to ask her for a hug before she left, but I did anyway, and she said yes. And that was the last time I saw her. She lived really close by, maybe like a 10-minute walk, but we still never really hung out. I remember asking her if I could come say bye to her the day that I moved away, and we weren't able to. Um, when I started my 11th grade year, I really wasn't doing good. I had started dating this girl named Cadence. Um, I was friends with her in my English class of 10th grade for a little while. Um, but it was my first relationship, and it was long distance. And I didn't really know her very well. But it was the first time in my life that someone had openly told me that they liked me. Um, so we dated for a while, um, almost a year, actually. Um, I didn't have a lot of friends in 11th grade for a long time. I remember I would sit alone. Um, there were people in my theater class that I really wanted to be friends with, but I could never bring myself to talk to them. One day, the person I mainly wanted to be friends with, Sage, um, her and this other guy, Dyson, texted me and told me to come sit with them. And then from then on, I started sitting with them every day. I started being friends with Dyson as well, and kind of friends with everyone else they hung out with. Um, they all hung out with each other a lot more than with me, and it was because, I didn't really go out a lot. Cadence didn't have a whole lot of friends, and so I always felt bad going out. Um, Near the end of my 11th grade year, I broke up with Cadence on the last day of school, actually. I was just done, you know. And because of that, I didn't go to the last day of school. Um, I wasn't answering my phone. Sage and Dyson came over and brought me snacks and stuff. I never ate the snacks, though, because I couldn't bring myself to eat. And from there, my mental health got really bad. Um, I would play games a lot. I played Fortnite with Lily a lot, almost every single day. She was honestly the only sense of consistency I had. I remember getting another really big crush on her for a long time. Um, and then after a while, Sage started getting me out of the house. We would go shopping and hang out at her dad's house, and we would hang out with Dyson. But then I got really sick. So sick I could barely get out of bed, and I couldn't eat. I mean, I didn't really eat anyway, but I had the worst cough I've ever had. um, and then my parents would get mad at me a lot. They would get mad at me for not eating, even though every time I tried I would throw up and it would hurt. And they would get mad at me for not going outside, even though I could barely get out of bed. All I really wanted to do was die. They would get mad at me that I didn't have a job. I remember one day my dad brought me out of the house and took me to a card store, and I went in with him, and I remember having to go up the stairs, and I struggled to breathe so bad that like I would almost pass out. And then he got really mad at me and yelled at me for not agreeing to go and take applications from different places. And then the next day, I landed myself in the ER because I was having a lot of trouble breathing. It was going to be a normal doctor's appointment, but when we got there, my doctor saw how sick I was, and when she checked my oxygen, her face went like blank, and she urged my dad to rush me to the ER. And when we got there, they put me on a bunch of oxygen, and I remember it being so much that I could barely breathe, like I was being barraged with air. And I remember hearing people in the ER cry, and I remember getting an IV in me for the first time. And then I got transferred to another hospital via an ambulance. I remember thinking, why couldn't they just let me be, you know? Um, um, they did an x-ray of me, and a doctor said that something looked like I had tuberculosis. And because they had a small suspicion of it, I got transferred to a hospital that was about an hour away from my house. And since I wasn't 18, I had to be in a children's hospital. They moved me to quarantine, and my mom came with my brother. They checked on me, and then my dad came back after leaving for a while. I remember sitting in the hospital alone for a while. Every time a doctor would come into the room with me, they would all wear these big suits, like I had the plague or something. My mom mom stayed with me when I was at the hospital. Um, I remember I had a lot of trouble eating. I couldn't eat barely anything. The only thing I could really stomach were mandarin oranges and a little bit of like mac and cheese. Um, I was in quarantine for quite a while. They had sent labs in to see if I had tuberculosis and trying to figure out what I had, and eventually we learned that I had 2 types of pneumonia in each of my lungs, and that my oxygen was so bad I almost had permanent lung damage because I didn't go to the hospital when I should have a long time ago. And I remember to this day thinking about it that it kind of hurt that we didn't go to the hospital for so long, because my parents never thought it was that bad. They never really believed that I needed help. Um, After I got out of the hospital, I came home and my parents had went through my room and went through all my stuff. Um, they were really strict about making sure I ate food, even though I still really struggled to. Um, and I remember the rest of that summer being really hard. I hated it, and I just didn't want to do anything. I had to do breathing exercises so I could breathe normally again. And I remember I was on um, medicine for a long time, and the medicine tasted horrible. Then I went into my 12th grade year, and um, me and Sage started dating. Um, and it was pretty hard because she had went off to college, and so I found myself in another long distance relationship. Um, and I remember still not having the most friends ever. I talked with Dyson for quite a while. He was really the only person I hung out with. But he started dating someone that I really didn't like, that didn't treat me good. And under their influence, he didn't really treat me good. So we stopped talking. Um, I made a friend in 11th grade named Morgan, and that year after me and Dyson stopped talking, I kind of started talking with Morgan more. Um, and that's when I met Morgan's friend Alyssa, and both of them to this day are still some of my best friends. Um, they're both really nice, and they both have good views, and they're both really funny. I got really close with them, and sometimes we would hang out. Um, Eventually, me and Dyson reconnected during one of the theater productions. I remember I worked the soundboard, and I hated it because our teacher didn't she didn't treat us very good. Um, and Sage were doing okay for a while, but the more time went on, the more I realized that, I had started to neglect a lot of the friendships I'd had. I stopped talking to Sasha, and I stopped talking to Sabrina, and Sage told me to stop being friends with Lily, and instead of telling her no, I listened. I remember Lily sounded so heartbroken, and I knew that I was such a bad person for that. I remember being really sad about it, because Lily was one of my best friends ever. She was always there for me when I needed it. Um, I remember that Sage always seemed off put by the fact that I was sad over it. Um, Eventually, I broke up with Sage um, because I just wanted to feel independent again. I wanted to feel like I could come home and I could choose what I do, and that, I was my own person, I guess. Because for a long time I felt like I had lost that feeling. Soon after, I reconnected with Sasha and started talking to Sabrina again, and um, eventually I reached out to Lily and I apologized for how awful I was to her, how awful I was for listening to Sage when she said to stop being friends with her. Um, and now that's kind of where I'm at right now. Not doing the best. Um, Into a lot of old unhealthy habits like not really eating and not really sleeping and doing self harm and just wanting to disappear, I guess. Anyways, that's kind of the whole story of my life. I left out a lot of big stuff because they're gonna have their own dedicated videos, but thank you if you listened to this whole rant.